Thank you very much for the introduction. It's an honor to participate in SiriusCon 2021. I'm Akira Tanaka, View5 LLC. Today I will talk about developing modeling tool for RM-ODP with Eclipse Sirius. Outline of my talk is the following. I will explain RM-ODP first and talk about enterprise architecture, especially TOGAF Ultimate, then talk about the tool DSL4ODP project and the tool's relationship with UML4ODP tools. From this point, you will see the slide and the demo video. Here is the agenda, RM-ODP, enterprise architecture, DSL4ODP tool, and comparison with UML4ODP tool. RM-ODP stands for Reference Model of Open Distributed Processing. It's a family of standards of ISO and ITU-T. It's also a multi-part standard, and main parts are foundation, framework, enterprise language, and use of UML4ODP system specifications. It's a standard framework for specifying open distributed systems. The foundation defines the basic concepts, and the framework defines the viewpoint languages, and structuring rules, and so on, to define ODP systems. It's methodology independent, and also it's notation independent. However, since UML became this international standard, we developed the UML profile standard as well. Here are some resources. The RM-ODP site and the book is here, and the last one is ITU-T recommendations page. If you go to the ITU-T site, you will see this page and you can download recommendations in PDF form for free. This is the actual ITU-T recommendations page, and X900 series is for ODP. The foundation standard is organized like this. You can see we started from very basic concepts. The main feature of the framework is viewpoint. In the framework standard, we defined 5 standard viewpoints: enterprise information, computational engineering, technology correspondence between viewpoints. Enterprise talks about objects, roles, communities, policies, processes, and so on. It's like a business architecture. Computational talks about logical functionality, and engineering talks about supporting engineering mechanisms. Technology talks about implementation, conformance, and the information viewpoint talks about a static invariant dynamic schema. Now let's take a look at the definition of enterprise architecture. This is from Wikipedia. Enterprise architecture is concerned with the structure and the behavior of business, especially business roles and processes that create and use business data. The second one is, I think, more widely known. It's been defined as a well-defined practice for conducting enterprise analysis, design, planning, and implementation using a comprehensive approach at all times for the successful development and execution of strategy. The famous enterprise architecture frameworks: Zachman framework, FEA, DODAF, and TOGAF. Zachman framework has 6 perspectives and 5 W1H. OMG has a standard called Unified Profile for DODAF and MODAF, and I'll talk a little bit about TOGAF and Archimate, Archi. Those are the tools, and obvious Smart EA product. I just try to compare RM-ODP with TOGAF in this table. The points are scope and viewpoint languages, notation, methods, and tools, and the main technical differences are in scope. For instance, ODP is a framework for specifying open distributed systems. On the other hand, TOGAF scope is wider than that. It's a framework for enterprise architecture, or a standard approach for assisting in the acceptance, production, use, and maintenance of enterprise architecture. And the viewpoint looks like quite similar. If you look at the detail, then they are different. The notation, except for UML4ODP, RM-ODP says it's notation independent. And TOGAF has Archimate graphical notation. ODP says it's method independent, and TOGAF has ADM architecture development method. Let's talk about enterprise architecture tools. If you search enterprise architecture tools on the web, you will get a rich set of references to a lot of tools. EA tools examples are: first, you can use whiteboard, notebook or paper, a sheet of paper, a spreadsheet, drawing tools for capturing and organizing enterprise architecture elements. And you can use Arch, is a tool from TOG implementing Archimate models of TOGAF. Obvious Smart EA has support for Archimate. And various UML tools in the market provide TOGAF plugin and or OMG's UML profile for DODAF MODAF implementation. Let's go back to RM-ODP. RM-ODP is a notation independent. Therefore, when you create the ODP specifications, they are mostly in text form, possibly with supporting materials, documents, diagrams, tables, and spreadsheets, etc. It's good because you have a variety of method notation to write ODP specifications. However, it's not so easy to communicate between the stakeholders. So, we decided to create a UML profile standard. Use of UML for ODP system specifications is the official name of the UML profile, and we call it UML for ODP. In short. So, as you expect, it's just a UML-based notation for the expression of ODP specifications. You can use drag and drop and use a stereotype to assign the ODP semantics to the UML element. It was because UML was already an international standard, so it was natural to make use of UML profile mechanism. It provides the expression of a system specification in terms of RM-ODP viewpoint using defined UML concepts and extensions, and the relationship between the resultant ODP viewpoint specification is at the correspondence. The last one is about conformance. So, how did we create UML profile? We first created a meta model or conceptual model of RM-ODP and then defined UML profile based on the meta model. The last point, the UML profile was implemented against several UML tools. For instance, an implementation for Magic Draw was the tool used in writing our ODP book. Now let's talk about UML profile. It's a mechanism to extend standard UML, and the diagram is called the profile diagram, in that you can define the stereotype by extending the meta class. And you can add tag value or you can add constraint. Here's some example of the UML4ODP diagram. This is the top level spec. You can see enterprise information computational engineering and the technology spec in the middle. And both sides are correspondence specifications between two viewpoint specifications. These are the enterprise specification examples. They describe the role, object, process, policy, etc. This doesn't cover everything, it's just an example. This is another set of example for information viewpoint. Left side invariant schema, right side static schema. From left to right, you can see an example of computational engineering and technology viewpoint diagram. Now, let's move to DSL4ODP tool. What and why? It's an alternative to UML tool with ODP plugin. Sirius-based graphical DSL tool should be capable of editing similar diagrams in UML4ODP standard. Why do we want alternative? I got an inquiry last year about ODP tool, so I suggested to use Magic Draw product with ODP plugin. It was and still is the best choice to edit ODP model. However, the tool vendor was acquired and the license fee for this product went up significantly. There are people who need an affordable ODP tool, so I was thinking about creating alternative ODP tools. The options at that moment was create another UML4ODP implementation for against an open UML modeler like Papyrus or Sirius-based DSL modeler. And the consideration points was dependencies and extendability. So if I create 4ODP implementation, then it should be dependent on the UML spec and the UML implementation, and the extensibility may be limited. If we go with Sirius-based DSL modeler, then we should be dependent on Eclipse and Sirius, but we can have enough extendability. That's why I took the second option. So the idea is the Sirius-based DSL tool, and the fact is that the UML4ODP standard contains the meta model. So I decided to use this as a base. Based on that model, I created an echo file. There was some issues. The number of stereotypes were larger than the number of meta model elements in UM4ODP. So echo file need to be extended, and equivalence of several basic UML elements and structures such as package, state machine, process flow, they need to be created. Okay. So what I did was, for each model diagram in UML4ODP, create a new diagram in echo file to include additional E-classes to represent all the necessary elements, if any, and references the same, and save the file, edit configuration file, and try test the diagram. I also needed to define ODP instance model structure, the standard one, to allow navigation within the model. As one of the tool considerations, I needed to consider new diagram creation. At first, I used the context menu of model elements in Model Explorer, but it's not so convenient, so I switched to double-clickable diagram element in case it was possible. Now, this is the status. It's a working progress project. Enterprise information and correspondence between enterprise and information were covered. It's now open for review. The latest version is here in my Dropbox folder. Currently it's a version 0.2 revision 1, and the new releases will be posted on this place. And if you go to that URL, you will see those folders and files. Documents folder containing about DSL2 and using DSL2 document, and video containing installation and sample project, and release notes sample project, and the working product folder includes the archive file of the DSL4ODP designer and readme text. From here I'll show you a little bit of the tool. If you download the software from the URL, you will get those folders and files. If you go to the working product folder, you will see archive files for Linux, Mac, and Windows. Since I'm using Mac, I'll double click this to get the DSL4ODP designer. If I double click this, then it says it's broken. However, it's not broken. You will need to open the terminal. And this is a software. If you execute that command, then it's now possible to launch. Use the default workspace. Here you are, you get the tool working. Now I prepare the sample project, existing project workspace. Since it's archive file, you need to check this. It's under sample project. Let's finish importing the sample project. Now, if you check the viewpoint selection, it's already selected. Oh, you need to switch the perspective to Sirius or modeling. Here's the top level diagram. See, these are viewpoint specifications: enterprise, information, computational, engineering, and technology. And this one is correspondence spec between enterprise and information. Here you can see the mark saying this. You can double click this to open this spec. It's an enterprise spec diagram. It has global enterprise objects. This is a package I created, and this is a library community contract called library. This is also a community contract, and inside the community contract, the community library. Community contract can be double clicked. Here the library, community contract library, and this one is community, library community. And there are three packages: objects, roles, policies. We'll check these. Okay, first let's start with objects. In the object, you will see those objects are already defined. As you saw, there was an enterprise object global, and this is the normal object. Also, I say normal, there are a variety of things, stuff here. The rows package contains rows. This is a state machine for library system role. And the policies. In ODP, we have this policy envelope, and this one is policy value. Policy envelope may have multiple policy values, and this one shows the current value. The policy affects behavior of the library systems, affects the behavior of this process, and this is the these are the behaviors. Okay. Inside the library, we define processes and interactions. Borrow item process is defined as a process flow. Road borrower, assistant library systems, step, and artifact, right? Process alone, this is an interaction diagram which shows more details of the process inside the process. And coming back to this top level diagram, there's some information, viewpoint specification. Here's the invariant schema, which is like a class diagram. And dynamic schema is state machine. And static schema is snapshot, or in UML it's an object diagram. This is a correspondence diagram. It shows that there's a correspondence between long object in enterprise viewpoint and the long object in the information viewpoint. And the correspondence may be more than one. So one detailed one, another detailed one. With this kind of notation, you can specify the correspondence between viewpoint specifications. Now here the comparison between DSL4ODP and RM-ODP. DSL4ODP is still work in progress, but functionality wise, of course, RM-ODP covers the full set. Availability. DSL4ODP is a standalone application and it's freely downloadable. RM-ODP, you need to have Magic Draw license. And extensibility, not implemented yet, but there are various possibilities. Model transformation, code generation, textual model on the web. And for UML4ODP, it's just the ODP plugin. And the dependencies are Eclipse Sirius and EMF, probably in future Axelio and XX. And UM4ODP depends on UML spec and the tools implementations, including API. The openness, I'm planning to open source this DSL4ODP in future. Okay, that's the difference. Short-term future plan is adding, removing remaining viewpoints, and I got a request to add the code generation from invariant schema to Java. Those are the possible future plans. Summary. So do not forget it's an ongoing work in progress project. just covered first two viewpoints so far. The tool allows creating most of the human diagrams of enterprise and information viewpoints. There are various possibilities to extend, and I just confirmed that Eclipse Sirius is a very suitable tool for this project. If you have equal, you can define a configuration file to generate your model editor. And from my experience, if you start with meta model of any UML profile, you might need to add package association, common structures to meta model, and relax multiplicities. Execute the loop until you are done. Loop means update the equal, regenerate the code, edit configuration file, and test. Sirius documentation and validation function on the configuration file, as well as searching Sirius forum and GitHub.com was very helpful. Here the check against requirements for ODP enterprise architecture tools. This was paper in 2007 for EDOC conference. I just checked the function requirement, how much I can satisfy, that my tool can satisfy these requirements. Okay, thank you very much.